Hi, Rod Fleming here, and it's getting hot, so I will probably have to stop after this one. Sexual inversion. Now, sexual inversion has been known about since the 19th century. Ulrichs, one of the early commenters on sexuality, discussed it, as did Magnus Hirschfeld. Henry Havelock Ellis wrote a whole book on the subject of sexual inversion, and it's well worth reading. It's volume 1 of his studies in human sexuality, and it's available from my website, by the way. It's downloadable there. It's out of copyright. If you go there, you can download a copy of it, or you can get it from Gutenberg. Easy. Anyway, the point here is that we now know that it's a real thing. I mean, gays have been trying for 30, 50 years now to pretend that no, it's not real, but actually it is real. We now know that sexual inversion is a real thing, and it's caused by anomalies in testosterone delivery to the fetus in utero. So before you're born, you're supposed to get a certain level of testosterone, if you're a boy, at certain periods of time throughout your development as a baby. And if these fail, then you won't be masculine, right? And that tends to mean that you will have female sexuality, or at least feminized sexuality, and you will have usually other body characteristics more in line with the female than the male. So you will be more like your sisters than your brothers, okay? And this is well known. It's absolutely established now. I mean, there's no doubt about this. We know this, and of course it proves two things. First of all, gender is innate, and secondly, sexual inversion is a real thing, and it is innate. And the problem is that there is still a very strong, in fact, it's fighting back, a very strong new gay man lobby that rejects this idea of sexual inversion, because they have been spending years trying to masculinize themselves and perform a completely false, they're not masculine, what the masculinity they perform is totally false. They perform this false masculinity, and they try to suppress the idea that they're actually inverted. I mean, how you can possibly be a person who wants to be penetrated and pretend that you're not sexually inverted, I don't understand, but that's what they do. I mean, they're capable of the most ridiculous illogicity, if that's a word. Is that a word? Ridiculous levels of non-logic, of illogic. Now, around about 2000, a well-known New Gay Man commenter, the New Gay Man hadn't fully crystallized in the UK by then, but he was certainly there in the United States. He really had taken over, you know, and destroyed all the other forms of homosexuality, male homosexuality that existed. You were just not allowed to be feminine by then. And this had not fully taken over in the UK by 2000, but Jim Furat, this guy, was a New Yorker. He was one of the ones who claims to have been there on the first night of the Stonewall riots, or Stonewall annoyances. That was disputed by others who were there, or who claimed to be there, so point moot. One of the interesting things about Stonewall is that it was actually led by a number of transsexuals who were completely erased. And if you remember, there was a film a few years ago called Stonewall, and they took out all the trans women and replaced them with guys, which was ludicrous. It was like, you what? You know? And Sylvia Rivera, for example, was very famous. There were two, I can't remember both their names, who were extremely famous women, trans women, who led these protests, and yet they were completely erased from the historical record, or by the gay historical record, the New Gay Man, because New Gay Man always did detest anything feminine, absolutely hates it, and he, more than anything else, he totally loathes transsexualism, because that is for him, it absolutely confirms that sexual inversion is real. You know, if you have transsexuals, and I'm talking about homosexual transsexuals, true transsexuals, that's the ones who know they're girls when they're 4 and are hugely attracted to men, or to masculinity from that age, and who grow up to be girls, then you've just proved that sexual inversion is real. And that's why the New Gay Man is so invested in preventing these young people from being allowed to transition. That's why he sided himself with the most vicious group in contemporary society, the radical feminists. Because they don't want it either. They don't want it because they detest anything that has XY chromosomes. As simple as that. They're just man-haters. But the new gay man doesn't want people transitioning, doesn't want people like him transitioning anyway. First of all, because it indisputably proves the idea of sexual inversion. And secondly, if they transition, then they'll just float off into society and find themselves a nice guy and settle down and have dogs, you know, because they can't have kids, or maybe they might adopt kids, that's quite common now. And they'll not be part, and they will not be available to, the new gay man cult. Which will mean that if enough of this happens, the new gay man cult will die. It'll disappear. And way back in 2000, as I started off there, this guy, Jim Furat, he stood up at a conference and in an absolute rage. There were lots of trans women there, mainly AGPs, of course, because HSTS tend to just stay out of the way. And bellowed to the crowd, you know, these are crazy queens who will destroy the way we live our lives. And, you know, I very rarely like to agree with Jim Furat, but he was absolutely right. And we should applaud it. We should, great, that's wonderful. Let's go it, let's do it. Let's put an end to this nonsense. Let's have feminine boys turning into women, which is what they're meant to be, because after all, they do have female sexuality. You know, the whole new gay man is predicated on an absurd lie, which is that these people are a kind of man, which they're not. They have female sexuality. How can you be a man with female sexuality? That's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And so this is what's happened. And now you're seeing in the platforms like YouTube, curse it, are giving some of the dregs of these cultures a platform for their bigotry and their hatred of trans women, and saying, no, it's awful. You know, I love to play with girly toys and dollies and dress up as a girl when I was a little kid, but then no. I got masculine, you know, and I was persuaded that it was a good idea to be a man, and I'm quite happy to be a man. Oh, yes. Apart from the fact you've lived a life of complete misery and you have never stopped having gender dysphoria because of it, which they're not going to admit to, are they? Now, you have to understand that these people will do anything they can to harm pre-transsexual children. And they do it for, you know, vile people like Keen Minchell. They do it because they detest anything that has XY chromosomes. They just detest anything male. And men, they hate anything male. And they want males destroyed. A new gay man is the opposite. He adores masculinity. He is a girl, but he's not allowed to be a girl because of the rules of the game, because the rules he invented. So he's going to stop other people from feminizing themselves, young people who should become girls. He's going to do everything he can to stop that. And that's what Zucker was doing. Zucker was playing into this nonsense for years. He bought right into the bullshit, the new gay man bullshit. And thankfully, he was got rid of. Thankfully, he was, you know, shut down and his clinic was closed, because it should have been. It's an absolute nonsense that was continuing right into the second decade of the 21st century. Anyway, we're now looking at a situation where these people who were marginalised in some ways are fighting back. They've found allies in the TERFs. Something good you can say about a TERF. They're the kind of thing that you scrape off your shoes before you go in the house, you know. They're absolutely disgusting, repulsive people, filled to the brim with hatred of men, simply of men. Why? Because men want to fuck them. It's that simple. They can't stand it, and that's why they're anti-sex, anti-femininity, anti-being a woman, anti-motherhood. All of that is because we don't want sex. Anyway, those are the allies, the new allies of the new gay man. Despite the new gay man's absolutely spectacular levels of misogyny, he's allied himself with this bunch of feminine creeps, or sorry, female creeps, because they ain't feminine, in order to try to destroy true transsexuals. And what I'm going to say is that if you have any kind of interest in this, whether you're transsexual yourself, or maybe you're the partner of a transsexual, or you just like the whole thing and you know, quite like going to places where there are lots of transsexuals hanging out and they're good fun, you know, and it's quite nice having one sitting on your knee because they're fun and they're nice people and it's good. If you want to defend them from these horrible, horrible, horrible people, you're going to have to start speaking out. You're going to have to start shutting these people down in the YouTube videos and the Facebook posts where they and their disgusting sycophants congregate and challenge them and shut them down and say, no, you are wrong. These people have an absolute right to live their lives the way they want to live them. And here's the thing, most jurisdictions in the West assume an age of criminal liability between the age of 8 to 12. So you can be punished for crimes, serious crimes, when you're 10 years old. And yet, 10, 12 years old, and yet, you have the mental capacity to know what it is to commit a serious crime. And yet you don't have the mental capacity, these people are saying, to know what gender you are. That's total and utter bollocks. That's all it is, it's bullshit. Of course they know what they are. And if they change later, it's because you people have been working overtime to try to undermine their self-confidence and destroy them. And it all has to stop. It all has to stop. And I don't care how it stops. What they're actually doing is preaching the eradication of an entire group of people. And that's unacceptable. In my view, totally unacceptable. So there, that's my view for the day. Take care of yourselves.